Sir, we need to see your papers. Immigration enforcement.
I'm the chief of police for this city. My credentials are in my truck.
Sure you are. Step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them.
My grandchildren are in the car. I'm taking them home from church. You're making a mistake.
The only mistake is you not cooperating. Papers,
all right,
now.
My hands are up.
The body camera mounted on Agent Michael Brennan's chest recorded everything that Sunday afternoon at 12:47 p.m. The camera was standard federal issue, 1080p video with audio automatically uploading to secure servers every 60 seconds, the kind of footage that couldn't be deleted or altered once it started recording. It recorded the view from Brennan's chest as he walked across the parking lot of Greater Hope Baptist Church on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. It recorded a black man in his early 60s standing at the open back door of a silver Chevrolet Tahoe, buckling a little girl into her car seat while a boy around 8 watched from inside the vehicle. And it recorded everything that happened when Brennan decided this man needed to show his papers. Before we continue, drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like this don't get told unless we tell them, and your support helps us bring more people to the truth. Chief Harold Raymond Washington was 61 years old. He had been the chief of police for the city of Millbrook, Georgia for 7 years, and before that, he had worn a badge for 34 years, starting as a patrol officer at 23, working his way up through detective, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and deputy chief before the mayor appointed him to the top job. He was born in Albany, Georgia in 1963, the same year Dr. King wrote his letter from a Birmingham jail. His father, Harold Sr., was born in Macon in 1930. His mother, Dorothy, was born in Savannah in 1938. His grandparents on both sides were born in Georgia, Thomasville, Valdosta, Augusta, Columbus, their roots in that red clay soil stretching back 5 generations, back to people whose names were never recorded because the law didn't consider them people at all. His father had served in Korea with the 24th Infantry Regiment, one of the last segregated units in the United States Army, earning a Bronze Star for valor near the Pusan perimeter. He came home to a country that still made him drink from separate fountains, but he never let bitterness poison him. He worked 38 years for the Postal Service, retiring as a supervisor, and he raised his son to believe that service meant something, that protecting your community was the highest calling a man could have. Harold had believed him. He had made that belief his life. He met his wife, Lorraine, at a church picnic in 1984. She was a third-grade teacher with a laugh that carried across the yard. They married in 1986 in the same church where Harold had just attended Sunday service, Greater Hope Baptist, where his family had worshiped for 4 generations. They raised 2 children, Harold III, now 36, a pediatrician in Atlanta, and Michelle, now 33, an assistant district attorney in Savannah. Lorraine had passed 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed in April, gone by September. Harold still wore his wedding ring. He still sat in the same pew they had shared for 38 years. He still heard her voice in the hymns. The grandchildren, Marcus, 8, and Destiny, 6, were Michelle's kids. She had driven up from Savannah the night before for a weekend visit, and Harold had offered to take the kids to church while she slept in. It was their routine when she visited. Grandpa took them to Sunday service, then to lunch at the diner on Peachtree Street, then back home, for an afternoon of cartoons and whatever cookies Grandpa wasn't supposed to let them have. They had just finished the service. The choir had sung, "His Eye is on the Sparrow," Lorraine's favorite hymn. Harold had held Destiny on his lap during the sermon because she got restless in the pews. Marcus had sat beside him, serious and attentive, already showing signs of the thoughtful man he would become. Now they were in the parking lot, the Georgia sun beating down. The temperature already pushing 89 degrees, the kind of humid heat that made your shirt stick to your back before you reached your car. Harold was buckling Destiny into her car seat, making sure the straps were snug when he heard the vehicle pull up behind him. He turned. 2 men, white, late 30s, tactical vests over plain clothes. The vest said, "Police Ice" in yellow letters. One had his hand resting on his holstered weapon. The other was already reaching for something on his belt. The body camera recorded everything that followed. So did the dash cam in the ICE vehicle. So did the cell phone of Deacon Willie Patterson, 74, who had walked out of the church and immediately started recording when he saw what was happening. Agent Michael Brennan was 38 years old. He had been with Immigration and Customs Enforcement for 6 years, transferred in from Customs and Border Protection after a disciplinary issue that was never fully explained in his personnel file. He had a reputation among his colleagues for being aggressive, for pushing boundaries, for treating every interaction like a potential arrest. His partner, Agent Thomas Hartley, was 34 and had been with ICE for 4 years. He was quieter, more cautious, but he had never once contradicted Brennan in the field. He followed where Brennan led. They had been conducting surveillance on a residence 3 blocks from the church, watching for a man who had overstayed a visa and had an outstanding deportation order. They had not found him. They were about to leave when Brennan spotted Harold Washington walking across the parking lot with 2 children. What Brennan saw was a black man near a church in a neighborhood that was rapidly gentrifying, a neighborhood where ICE had made several arrests in recent months. What Brennan decided, in that moment, based on nothing but assumption, was that this man was worth questioning. He pulled the SUV into the church parking lot, blocking the silver Tahoe. "Sir, we need to see your papers. Immigration Enforcement." Harold Washington had spent 34 years dealing with tense situations. He had talked down armed suspects. He had negotiated hostage situations. He had delivered death notifications to grieving families and maintained his composure through everyone. He knew how to stay calm, when everything around him was chaos. But this was different. His grandchildren were in the car. Marcus was watching through the window, his eyes wide. Destiny was asking, "Grandpa, who are those men?" "I'm the chief of police for this city. My credentials are in my truck." He said it clearly, calmly. The way he had identified himself thousands of times over 34 years, Brennan didn't react to the title, didn't reach for a radio to verify, didn't take a step back. His hand stayed on his weapon. "Sure you are. Step away from the vehicle." "Hands where I can see them." Should federal agents be allowed to demand papers from anyone in a church parking lot? Comment below, because what happened next would expose how far unchecked authority can go, even on sacred ground. Harold's jaw tightened. He could feel his pulse in his temples, but he kept his voice steady. "My grandchildren are in the car. I'm taking them home from church. You're making a mistake. The only mistake is you not cooperating. Papers, now." The body camera captured Harold raising his hands slowly, palms out, showing he was no threat. It captured the reflection in the Tahoe's window, his grandchildren's faces, Marcus pressing his hand against the glass, Destiny starting to cry. "My name is Harold Raymond Washington. I am the chief of police for the city of Millbrook, badge number 0001. I have served this community for 34 years. My wallet is in my back pocket. My badge is in my center console. My service weapon is locked in a case under the front seat, as required by law when I'm off duty. I am an American citizen. I was born in Albany, Georgia. My father was born in Macon. My grandfather was born in Thomasville. My family has been in this state for 5 generations." Brennan glanced at Hartley. The dashcam captured the look, uncertainty flickering for just a moment before arrogance returned. "Anyone can claim to be a cop. We'll verify that downtown. Turn around. Hands on the vehicle." "I am not going to do that. My grandchildren are watching." "You have no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, no legal basis to detain me. I am invoking my rights under the 4th Amendment. I am asking you to contact your supervisor and verify my identity before this situation escalates further." Brennan took a step forward. His hand moved from resting on his weapon to gripping it. "I'm not going to ask again." Deacon Willie Patterson had been recording for 2 minutes now. He was standing 30 feet away, his phone held steady, his voice murmuring a prayer under his breath. He had grown up in Jim Crow, Georgia. He had seen things that still woke him at night. And he knew in his bones what he was watching. Other people were emerging from the church now. The service had ended, and congregants were walking to their cars. They saw the ICE agents. They saw Chief Washington with his hands raised. They saw the children crying in the Tahoe. Phones came out. 5, 10, 15 phones, all recording. Reverend James Booker, 68, the senior pastor of Greater Hope Baptist for 23 years, walked directly toward the confrontation. He was wearing his Sunday robes, his white hair catching the sunlight. Gentlemen, this is a house of God. This is sacred ground. And the man you are detaining is Chief Harold Washington, who has protected this community for over 3 decades. I have known him since he was a boy. What is the meaning of this? Brennan turned toward the Reverend. Sir, step back. This is federal business. Federal business? In my parking lot, detaining one of my congregants in front of his grandchildren? I don't think so. I am Reverend James Booker. I am the pastor of this church, and I am asking you, what probable cause do you have to detain this man? The question hung in the air. The cameras recorded Brennan's silence. What did he do? What law did he break? What evidence do you have? Brennan's face flushed red. The dashcam captured it clearly. This doesn't concern you. Step back or you'll be detained for obstruction. A woman's voice called out from the growing crowd. You're going to arrest a reverend too, in front of his church? Another voice. That's Chief Washington. He's the chief of police. Another. My son is a cop. He works for Chief Washington. The crowd was growing. 20 people now. 30. Congregants in their Sunday best. Elders with canes. Young families with children. All of them recording. All of them watching. Hartley, the younger agent, stepped close to Brennan and spoke quietly. The dashcam audio picked it up. Mike, maybe we should verify. If he's not. Look at him. Just another guy with a story. The words were captured, recorded, preserved. Harold Washington heard them. The body camera captured his reaction. A slight nod, almost imperceptible, the nod of a man who has just received confirmation of what he already knew. Agent, I'm going to reach into my pocket and pull out my phone. I'm going to call the mayor of this city, who appointed me to my position. I'm going to hand you the phone. And you're going to explain to him why you're detaining his chief of police in a church parking lot while his grandchildren watch. He moved slowly, deliberately, pulling his phone from his pocket. He dialed. He waited. Mayor Coleman. This is Harold. I'm in the parking lot of Greater Hope Baptist. 2 ICE agents have me at gunpoint in front of Marcus and Destiny. They're demanding my papers and they don't believe I'm the chief of police. I need you to speak with them. He held the phone out toward Brennan. Brennan didn't take it. The phone sat in Harold's outstretched hand for 15 seconds. The crowd watched. The cameras recorded. Mayor James Coleman's voice could be heard faintly through the speaker, asking what the hell was going on. Finally, Hartley stepped forward and took the phone. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Hartley's face went from skeptical to confused to pale. He handed the phone back to Harold without a word. He turned to Brennan. Mike, he's really the chief of police. The mayor confirmed it. The mayor is on his way here. We need to go. Now. Brennan stood frozen. His hand was still on his weapon. His career was collapsing in real time, and he was only beginning to understand it. There's been a misunderstanding. Harold Washington lowered his hands. He walked to the Tahoe and opened the back door. He leaned in to comfort his grandchildren, wiping Destiny's tears, squeezing Marcus's hand. Then he turned back to the agents. A misunderstanding. Is that what you're going to call it? You approached me in a church parking lot. You demanded my papers. You threatened to take me downtown. You terrorized my grandchildren. You did all of this based on nothing but the color of my skin. He paused. The cameras captured his face. Not angry, not shouting, but something worse. Sad, disappointed, tired. I have given 34 years to law enforcement. I have dedicated my life to the idea that the badge means something, that it represents justice and protection for everyone. And you just showed my grandchildren that none of that matters, that their grandfather, the chief of police, can be treated like a criminal because of how he looks. His voice dropped. My grandson is 8 years old. He wants to be a police officer when he grows up. He tells everyone, and now he just watched federal agents put their hands on their guns and demand papers from his grandfather outside our family church. He looked at Marcus through the window. The boy was still watching, his small hand pressed against the glass. What do I tell him now? The question hung in the humid Georgia air. The agents had no answer. The mayor arrived in 7 minutes. The local news arrived in 12. By evening, the footage was everywhere. The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later in federal court. Harold Raymond Washington versus the United States Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Agent Michael Brennan, and Agent Thomas Hartley. Harold retained civil rights attorney Vanessa Mitchell of Mitchell and Associates in Atlanta, a firm that had won over $60 million in civil rights settlements over the past 15 years. Mitchell had argued before the 11th Circuit 3 times and won all 3. Her track record against federal agencies was 24-2. This isn't just about Chief Washington, Mitchell said at the press conference announcing the lawsuit. This is about a pattern. ICE has a stated policy of avoiding sensitive locations, churches, schools, hospitals. They violated that policy. And they violated it to harass a 61-year-old grandfather, a decorated law enforcement officer, a man whose family has been in Georgia for 5 generations. If he's not safe, none of us are. The evidence was overwhelming. Agent Brennan's body camera footage showed the entire confrontation from his perspective, approaching the vehicle, demanding papers, dismissing every attempt at verification. The audio captured every word, including the moment he told his partner, "He's not. Look at him. Just another guy with a story." The ICE dashcam showed the agent's vehicle blocking the Tahoe. The cell phone videos from congregants showed the crowd's reaction and captured angles the body camera missed. The mayor's phone records confirmed the call. Chief Washington's personnel file confirmed 34 years of service. His birth certificate confirmed he was born in Albany, Georgia. His father's military records confirmed service in Korea. His family's records stretched back to the 1800s. Brennan's personnel file was subpoenaed. It revealed a pattern. In 4 years with ICE, Brennan had initiated 67 stops or detentions. Of those, 58 involved Hispanic or Black individuals, 87%. Of those 58, only 11 resulted in confirmed immigration violations. The other 47 were American citizens or legal residents who were stopped, questioned, and detained based on nothing but Brennan's assumptions about how undocumented immigrants look. The file also revealed the disciplinary issue from his CBP days. He had been reprimanded for using excessive force during a border stop and making racially charged comments that were captured on his body camera. He had been transferred to ICE rather than terminated. The pattern had continued. The 3 prior complaints against Brennan were also subpoenaed, complaints from other citizens who had been wrongfully stopped. All 3 had been dismissed by ICE Internal Affairs as unfounded. ICE offered a settlement 4 months before trial, $800,000 and a confidentiality agreement. Mitchell sent back a 1-word response: no. They offered $1.5 million. No. They offered $2.8 million. My client isn't interested in being silenced, Mitchell told their attorneys. He's interested in making sure this never happens again. See you in court. The trial lasted 3 weeks in federal court in Atlanta, before a diverse jury in a city that understood the weight of what was being decided. Harold Washington testified for 3 days. He walked the jury through his 34-year career, the promotions, the commendations, the lives saved, the community he had served. He described the moment he saw the agents approaching in the church parking lot. He described the fear in his grandchildren's eyes. He described what it felt like to have everything he had built, every sacrifice, every achievement, every year of service, mean nothing in the face of 2 men who looked at him and saw only a suspect. On cross-examination, the defense attorney suggested that Chief Washington had been uncooperative, that his refusal to immediately produce documents had escalated the situation. Washington's response silenced the courtroom. I was buckling my 6-year-old granddaughter into her car seat when 2 armed men approached me and demanded my papers. I identified myself as the chief of police. I offered to verify my identity through proper channels. I did everything right, everything I've spent 34 years teaching my officers to respect. And it didn't matter. Because to those agents, I wasn't a chief of police. I wasn't a 34-year veteran. I wasn't a grandfather taking his grandchildren home from church. I was just a black man who needed to prove he belonged in his own country. He paused. You ask why I didn't immediately comply. I ask you, why should I have to? What law did I break? What crime did I commit? What reasonable suspicion did they have? The answer is nothing. I did nothing. I was nothing but black in a parking lot, and in America, apparently, that's enough. Marcus Washington, now 9, was not permitted to testify due to his age. But a child psychologist testified about the impact of the incident on both children. Marcus had begun having nightmares. He had stopped talking about wanting to be a police officer. Destiny had started crying whenever she saw police cars. The damage wasn't just to Chief Washington. It was to the next generation of his family. It was to their trust in the institutions their grandfather had dedicated his life to. Reverend Booker testified about what he witnessed. Deacon Patterson testified about why he started recording. 12 congregants testified about what they saw, what they heard, what they felt, watching their police chief be treated like a criminal on the grounds of their church. Agent Brennan testified in his own defense. Under cross-examination, Mitchell asked him one question that would be replayed in news coverage for months. Agent Brennan, can you tell the jury what specific, articulable facts led you to believe that Chief Washington was an undocumented immigrant? Brennan was silent for 11 seconds. The jury counted everyone. He matched a general description. What description? A male, in the area. A black male in a church parking lot in Georgia. That was your description? Brennan had no answer. No further questions. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 20 minutes. When they returned, the courtroom fell silent. Liable on all counts. The damages phase took another 4 days. The jury heard expert testimony about the value of Chief Washington's career, his reputation, the damage to his family. They heard about the impact on his grandchildren. They heard about the broader message sent when federal agents can violate their own policies to harass a citizen in a church parking lot. The verdict, $12.3 million total. $5.1 million in compensatory damages to Chief Washington and his family for emotional distress, reputational harm, and the impact on his grandchildren. $6.2 million in punitive damages against ICE for their pattern of tolerating agents like Brennan, for ignoring complaints, for allowing a culture of racial profiling to flourish. $1 million in additional damages for the violation of the sensitive locations policy, a message that churches are not hunting grounds. Agent Michael Brennan was placed on immediate administrative leave following the verdict. 3 months later, after internal review proceedings concluded, he was officially terminated. His federal law enforcement credentials were permanently revoked. He would never carry a badge again. Agent Thomas Hartley was suspended for 6 months without pay and demoted upon return. He was transferred to a desk position with no field authority. The regional ICE director, who had dismissed the 3 previous complaints against Brennan, was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. He resigned 2 months later. ICE was required to implement new training on sensitive locations, with the church parking lot footage as mandatory viewing. They were required to establish new protocols for identity verification before detention. They were required to report quarterly to a federal monitor on their compliance with civil rights standards. Chief Harold Washington announced his retirement 6 months after the verdict. He had given 34 years to law enforcement. He said it was time to focus on his grandchildren. At his retirement ceremony, attended by over 400 officers and community members, he gave a speech that was reprinted in newspapers across the country. I became a police officer because I believed the badge could be a force for good. I still believe that, but I also know now, in a way I didn't fully understand before, what it feels like to be on the other side, to be seen as a threat, to have your identity questioned, to have your citizenship doubted, to be treated as guilty until proven innocent. He paused. I hope every officer in this room remembers that feeling, not to make you angry, but to make you better, to remind you that the person you're approaching is someone's father, someone's grandfather, someone's child. They have a story you don't know. And your job, your sacred duty, is to find out that story before you act, not after. He used $2 million of his settlement to establish the Washington Justice Initiative, providing legal representation for people who face civil rights violations by law enforcement. In its first year, the initiative represented 34 families. Marcus Washington, now 10, has started talking about being a police officer again. His grandfather takes him to community events, introduces him to officers, shows him that the badge can still mean something. "I'm not going to let what happened to me be the end of the story," Harold told a reporter on the one-year anniversary of the incident. "I'm going to make it the beginning of a different story, a better one, for Marcus, for Destiny, for all the grandchildren who deserve to see their grandfathers treated with dignity." The body camera footage from that day is now shown in federal law enforcement training programs across the country. It shows what happens when agents forget their training, forget their policies, forget that the people they encounter are human beings with rights and histories and families. And it shows Chief Harold Washington standing in a church parking lot with his hands raised, protecting his grandchildren the only way he could, with his voice, his dignity, and his unshakable knowledge of who he was. If you believe that a church parking lot should be sacred ground, that 34 years of service should mean something, that a grandfather should be able to take his grandchildren home from Sunday service without being treated like a criminal, hit that subscribe button. Share this video, tell this story. Because in a country where the chief of police can be detained for being black in a church parking lot, none of us are safe from assumption. The badge didn't protect Harold Washington that day. The body cameras did. And the courage to stand his ground, not with violence, not with resistance, but with the quiet, unshakable dignity of a man who knew exactly who he was. That's what they couldn't take from him. That's what they'll never take from any of us. Not if we keep watching. Not if we keep recording. Not if we keep telling these stories until they finally stop happening. Chief Washington is watching his grandchildren grow up now. Every Sunday he takes them to Greater Hope Baptist. They sit in the same pew his family has occupied for 4 generations. And every Sunday when the choir sings, "His Eye is on the Sparrow," Lorraine's favorite hymn, he closes his eyes and remembers that some things are worth protecting, some things are worth fighting for, and some ground is sacred no matter what any badge says.